Karl, can I first of all ask you how you first became interested and wanting to become an actor?
It's an interesting question. As I was growing up and in high school, and when I graduated after being an athlete, playing basketball in Lowell, Massachusetts, I migrated to New York City and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I started to work in a bakery as a porter with my father, and I liked going to the movies ever since I was a boy, and I started seeing plays around New York City, and while I was seeing these plays and movies, I just thought I had a feeling for it. It was the furthest thing from my mind of becoming an actor, because I was a very shy person growing up. And then when I heard what they pay actors, they pay you for doing this, I decided to give it a shot.
Do you remember the first acting role, leading role that you did, and how you felt at that time?
First leading role? Well, I remember my first paying job. It was a non-union job back in New York City, where I played the giant in Jack and the Beanstalk, and I got an equity wage, although I didn't belong to the union, and I performed before hundreds of children that were very loud, and even at that time I had timing on the stage to react to the affair between an actor and his audience, an interpretation.
From what you've been saying tonight, you've been in a lot more television parts and acting roles, like on Broadway, than I'd realised. Tell us about the times that you worked on the Alfred Hitchcock series and the things that you did in that.
Oh, well, I did 4 of them. One was a leading role in the title role called the 10 o'clock tiger, or an aging fighter, which was very enjoyable, first of all because it was a job, and working with a boyhood idol of mine who was a kid actor star in the silence when I was growing up without ever thinking of becoming an actor, and of course the late Robert Keith, who played the original Doc in Mr. Roberts on Broadway. And then I did another Hitchcock that was an hour long with Michael Wilding, and I did one with Peter Falk, and then I did one where Mr. Hitchcock himself directed the episode called Bang You're Dead, a story about a little boy who found his father's gun, and he kind of terrified the community until they found the gun and solved the problem.
What was Alfred Hitchcock like to work for? I mean, there's all sorts of stories about it could be easy, it could be difficult to work for. How did you find him?
I didn't have that much contact with him. The only thing I remember is he was sitting over there in the corner reading the London paper, and all I knew is I had this little scene with a boy as a mailman, and we were just about to have lunch, and I was pretty nervous because it was a hot day, and I wanted to do it in one take, and thank God I did it in one take.
Can we move on now to the series which is still so popular in England? It's probably been rerun more than any comedy show that I remember, and that's the Phil Silvers Show. Can you tell us how you first became involved with that particular series?
Well, over the years I've been pondering this question, and the more I think of it, of course I never did ask Phil about it, but at the time, this was back in 1951, 51, and we were breaking in a show called Remains to be Seen, the authors being Lindsay and Krauss, with Jackie Cooper, Howard Lindsay, Janice Page, Warner Anderson, and myself, and other people, of course. And they were breaking in a show in Boston called Top Banana that Phil scored in. And, of course, we were there with Remains to be Seen. So we saw their show, and they saw our show. And when this series, it was originally called You'll Never Get Rich, I was called in by CBS, and I had an interview with Phil and Ned Hiken, the creator. And I guess that was how I got there. It must have been. Oh, well, they might have seen me in some live TV too, and I worked with Red Buttons with Herbie Faye. I remember the first time I worked with Herbie Faye on Red Buttons' live TV show. It was kind of a half-hour sketch and variety show. So that might have been instrumental. And, of course, I was in the original production of Mr. Roberts, so imagine that helped.
I remember over the years, I think the strength of that particular series, the Bilko series, has been that each character, as I was saying earlier to you, each character was so strong, each part seemed to be so well written, each episode was so well written. And it seemed as though all the cast were enjoying themselves. Can you tell us about those days and if the cast did enjoy actually making the series?
Yes, we did. There was a lot of camaraderie, and we were joking all the time, and of course always being thankful that we had a job, and playing a little poker in between, and well-written scripts. I remember so vividly when Phil used to say, "What do you think of this one?" And he says, "Isn't that Nat something?" And it was amazing how Nat worked under pressure. We used to rehearse Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then shoot before a live audience with the 3 cameras on Thursday and Friday. Well, sometimes we wouldn't have a full script till Wednesday. And Phil, and well, especially Phil, because he had the brunt of learning all his lines, it was quite a pressure. But that's the way Nat worked. And I don't know how many people are aware of it, but Neil Simon, at the beginning of this series, he was one of the writers of the Bilko show. Mm-hmm. And you know what he's gone on to.
That's right. Was there much improvisation, was there much ad-libbing by Phil Silvers in the series? Because he seemed to be so quick-witted. I've watched several episodes time and time again, and I see something different in his performance, and the performance of all the cast, for that matter, and the reaction, the way that they go together. Was there much improvisation at all?
No, I wouldn't say there was much of that. They would wing it once in a while, here and there, because it was such a fast-paced show. But generally speaking, they pretty well kept to the script. Mm-hmm. And of course, the show was shot all the way through with the live audience there. And after the audience was dismissed, if there were any pickups, then they'd pick it up. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't say there was that much improvisation, even though it seemed that way.
Paul Ford as Colonel Hall was known as a bit of a bumbler, I think was the phrase that I heard, that he kept forgetting his lines. Was that the case, and how did that affect the filming of the series?
No, I don't think he was a bumbler in that respect. The bumbler reputation came from his quality of the interpretation of the part. No, Paul was a pretty sharp guy. Yeah, I don't think that had anything to do with it.
I mean, I wasn't trying to be discourteous to Paul Ford with that, because I think he was superb in the part that he played. I mean, but for people in the series, the other members, I don't think it could have been a success, or the success it is today. Each character, as I say, was a part in itself, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
What was Phil Silvers like to work with? Again, people like to destroy or assassinate the character of people once they've passed away, and a lot's been said of Phil Silvers on the negative side. Can you perhaps tell us something on the positive side of working with Phil Silvers as a person?
Well, I had nothing but respect for Phil right from the first time I met him, and working with him all through those years. As far as anybody talking otherwise, I'm amazed that anybody would, because Phil was always super with me. I respected him, he respected me. We saw things eye to eye. When I was auditioning for a Broadway show, he even sent me to his music teacher, a voice teacher, I should say. And the show was Rodgers and Hammerstein's A Pipe Dream. I smile every time I think of it. I picked out one of the hardest songs to sing. I have plenty of nothing. That's a hard song to sing, even for an experienced singer. But anyway, I was kind of grateful to Phil, because he was trying to help me, and I was one of the 5 finalists at this audition for this Broadway show, Pipe Dream, which isn't as well known as other Rodgers and Hammerstein hits. And incidentally, the late Mike Cullen got the part. But I was one of the final 10, so I'm very proud of that.
Before we leave the Bilko series, can you tell us what your thoughts are, the fact that it is still so successful, and perhaps how highly you rate the series? I know it's difficult because you was in it yourself, but how highly you rate that series amongst the greats of television comedy?
Well, I would say, first of all, because of the writing, and then the interplay between the different characters, and the humor of army life, and the different characters that just were so in contrast to each other that I don't think, not because I was in it, but personally I've been a Laurel and Hardy fan from years back, and this is the way the Bilko show, or the Lucy show, or all these, I would rate, just like you English people do, the Bilko show is right up there with them.